Welcome everybody, or at least those of you who have showed up so far. This is our second webinar, and we're very excited to be back here. I'll talk a little bit about Wild Ventures, and then I'm going to introduce our guests as people come in. All right, so Wild Ventures is a venture capital firm, early stage, focused mostly on the Israeli market. Typically doing seeds of say around $2-3 million, those kind of rounds, mostly focused on cybersecurity, drone technologies, autonomous vehicles, and VR/AR, and also other parts of enterprise software. We've been investing for 10 years. We've got some great, we've backed some great entrepreneurs and had some good successes and exits, and are very actively investing now out of our latest fund, which was raised about 4 months ago. Our third fund, a $75 million fund. We have not yet made a drone investment, but we've looked at a lot and we're very serious about it, and we're hoping to make the first one very soon. So that's it about Wild Ventures. I'm Yoav Leitersdorf. I'm heading up the firm. I founded it, and I have a great team that is working with me at Wild Ventures. Well, with me I have Jörg Lamprecht, who is the CEO of Dedrone.
Yep, thank you very much.
We are privileged to be able to interview Jörg. It's very exciting for us. We've known Jörg for a long time. Jörg has actually agreed to speak at another event we had last January for investors, for our limited partners, and they were so impressed with Jörg that we invited Jörg for a second time to a webinar format. So I'll let Jörg introduce himself and Dedrone as well.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, for the kind introduction. My name is Jörg. I'm originally from Germany and moved to San Francisco 2 years ago. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Dedrone, which is like a airspace security company. So we install sensors outside of buildings to sense drones and give warnings when like malicious drones are arriving. My previous company was actually a drone manufacturing company. So I did drones commercial aspects in 2011 till 2014, until I sold it to a Swedish company called Hexagon, and which is a huge company for surveying equipment. So yeah, happy to be here, and thanks again for giving us the opportunity to talk, and glad to get to know everybody here.
Very good. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to tell we already have questions from the audience. So basically the way this format works, and you know, maybe some of you have been in our previous webinar. So I have some canned questions here on my phone, which we've prepared, that I'll be asking Jörg, but our priority is actually to ask questions from the audience rather than our own canned questions. That's the goal of this interactive format. So please try to post your questions in the Q&A window of Zoom. So there are actually 2 windows where you can communicate with us: the Q&A session, the Q&A window, and the chat window. We definitely prefer questions to come in through the Q&A window. That's more organized for us. So if you can send your questions over there, that would be great. So I'm actually going to start with one of my questions, and it's actually about the general drone technology industry. We've had a few years of very strong buzz, especially a couple of years ago, where there were lots of financings, and there's a lot of talk about how big the commercial drone sector was going to be. But we feel like there's been a temporary slowdown or some cooling effect in this sector. Jörg, maybe you can tell us your thoughts about, well, first of all, whether you agree with that, and secondly, why you think that might be.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of drone technology in general. So I firmly believe there's the whole infrastructure, like we built it over the last hundreds, maybe thousands of years, is moving up to the airspace at the moment. So there's like drones with deliveries and inspection and surveying, mapping and data collection and blood deliveries in certain countries. So there's a whole world being created in the airspace, and that's the biggest room for innovation we have at the moment. I think what VCs would like to see is like commercializing the products. I mean, many people and many companies went to the market early with more or less similar ideas like surveying and mapping and mining and agricultural. And now it's really time to see these in action, see commercial products in action, not only software companies, but also software and hardware and drone companies, maybe deployed of certain sensors in certain verticals, being successful in one vertical.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's I understand. So it's mostly now about vertical applications, isn't it? Would you say so?
I would say the biggest chance and possibility and opportunity is for a new startup to pick and identify one vertical and make it big. You know, do ag, but do it right. You know, do like spraying and crop and fields and invasive species, but then do it right and dominate that space, and then go to the next vertical. Now, in commercial, we see a lot of companies doing many things, especially like in the area of construction, mining, maybe also insurance. And yet there has to be like defined a category leader, somebody who leads the pack and shows the world how it can be done. Like we see, for instance, in delivery. I think there's a very good concept in the market, and there's companies very advanced doing deliveries at the moment.
Very good. All right, so we'll take this one question here from the chat window. It's actually about Dedrone. I hope you don't mind answering. We see Detect and Drone Shield, and this is about competition and whether there's a price war going on here. So
the question is from when do we see defense for drone detection? So our job is of course to detect drones, and integrated defense will be legal when there will be some major incidents happened. At the moment, it's not illegal. The FAA clearly says the drone is an aircraft and you just can't do anything with it. But there's like in our space, meanwhile, 20, 30 companies competing with us. That shows how big the market in this space is.
Okay, very good. All right, let's take this question from Elon Sorek. Drones at night, is that realistic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the airspace is the same, the air is the same, everything else is the same. The drone does not need daylight to fly. The only question is, can you do it beyond visual line of sight? There's a lot of companies working on that. There's concepts around that. And I'm pretty sure it will happen because it's just doable. It's technically feasible, and it's, it should be done. Yeah.
Okay. And large drones, heavy payloads, larger than 55 pounds. What do you think about that?
Same thing. There needs regulations in place. But as you know, there's companies building man-carrying drones.
Like in China, right?
Oh, there's China, there's in Europe, there's two here. Think of Kitty Hawk, where it's one of the most prominent ones where I think Larry Page invested $100 million in it. So it's a drone that carries human beings. And it's the next generation of piloting people. And that's exciting and amazing. And of course, then you need payloads. At least for me, you need minimum 250 pounds.
Okay.
I come with luggage.
Right. Yes. Okay, very good. So again, guys and gals, if you wanna send in questions, please use the Q&A window in the Zoom application here. I'm gonna ask one of my own, which I'm extremely interested in. This whole notion of bad actors in the drone space, which is an area you know very well, given Dedrone's business. So we've been hearing about this. It's been mainstream news for years now. Privacy invasion, folks taking pictures where they're not supposed to, hacking of data centers and other facilities, drugs and weapons smuggling, for example, into prisons, terror-related usage. So as the drone ecosystem becomes more diversified and sophisticated, how do you see the anti-drone segment evolving?
Yeah, the evaluation, the technology, step-ups that drones are doing. I mean, they're no longer toys. They no longer fly around Christmas trees and, indoors. They fly large distances and carry huge payloads and are very autonomous, which also motivates the bad boys to do something malicious with it. So we see every day drones flying trucks into prisons. And it's a logical next step. I mean, you had the throw-overs years ago when people put drugs and tennis balls and just throw them over the walls. You wouldn't do that either. I mean, you get caught. So you take a drone, you fly from 3 miles away, you just drop things, very easy, autonomous, and very anonym. So yeah, there's a huge increase in bad behaving drones. And we're in security. That means we have to look for the one guy who's not following the rules. I mean, we're not looking for the 99.9% who do follow the rules. We're looking for the one guy who's not. And that's our business case. Same as in any security. I mean, you have, as a firewall only for the one hacker.
Yeah.
Maybe it detects you not for the 99% of good traffic you're regulating.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you see that, the bad actor activity, do you see that increasing, and do you see it increasing at a faster rate than we can introduce defenses?
Well, drones are here to stay. They won't go away. It's a new technology. It's in the market. Everybody knows it. There's hundreds of companies building components and drones and autopilots and propellers and everything. So the technology and the knowledge is there. We just have to get used to it. We just have to acknowledge that it's a fact. It's a drone. The good thing is there's a technical solution for it. Like burglar systems for your house, you can install burglar systems for the airspace and do that. And I don't think it's a problem which is going away. So we have to face it, and we have to just address it with technology, not with laws. Laws won't stop drones. We know that.
Yeah.
So technology will do the trick.
Yeah,
that's why Dedrone.
That's why Dedrone, absolutely. So let's speak about a related topic here, which is actually drones that are being flown by good actors. Okay, not the bad actors, the good actors. Their drones being hacked into. So it's now well known that DJI had some major software vulnerabilities, so much so that the US Army released a very aggressive statement asking to stop using DJI drones in the Army. That was a very fierce move. And we've heard of so many other, there have been a lot of other revelations of vulnerabilities, etc. So do you actually believe these are serious security concerns? Do you think it affects the adoption of drones? Is it going to slow down the drone industry? What are your thoughts about this?
It's like coming back to what I initially said. They're gonna conquer the airspace. There will be a lot of innovations and technology in the airspace. Hacking into drones is kind of a new threat, also for the drone manufacturers, which creates new businesses. There's companies who do security layers for drones to harden them and to make them hacker-proof. But yeah, I think it's a risk. If you see maybe one day an Amazon drone delivering products, and you could just hack into it and force it to land and take over control and steal goods that way, will happen, certainly. So great business model, great idea. Could be a little bit hard to market because you have to address all the drone manufacturers, or you have to find a way that pilots can install your new software. But certainly it's a security layer which is really needed.
Yeah, and do you know that there are solutions to this? Do you know of companies that are providing solutions, or maybe you think it's a wide open opportunity for maybe one of the entrepreneurs that's watching this webinar?
Oh, it's certainly an opportunity. I've seen one or two announcements regarding that, and it's certainly a must-have layer: intrusion detection for drones, intrusion prevention for drones. How do you make sure your drone won't get hacked, especially when you have like a very high security drone, like maybe from officials, government, military.
Okay, so security is one challenge. What do you think are some of the other challenges? And I'm asking in the drone industry, and I'm asking because these are typically opportunities for entrepreneurs to create startups.
But the drone industry hasn't really taken off yet. There's many in concept mode. I think what really works well is the whole construction side, like BIM, like flying through buildings that's been constructed. Agricultural is something which is really big. I think it's going to be extremely big ultimately, maybe the biggest drone market at all from all. Certainly mining.
Agriculture, the biggest.
Yeah,
okay.
One of the biggest.
Okay.
It's so easy to spray with drones, right? And you have special cameras meanwhile where you can just like look at your fields, see where it's like an invasive species of bugs, entering, and then just spray over there. You don't have to spray them. So that's ultimately going to be big. Challenges are, how do you find your niche and how you make it big? So sales channels, traction, sales approach, that's something which is like, that needs to be defined.
Okay, good. Well, maybe I'll mention a few other verticals and maybe tell me whether you think there's an opportunity there, and anything related specifically to this vertical. So like oil and gas, maybe through your customers, are you seeing that as an opportunity?
Oh yeah, I would see more drones with special sensors, maybe oil and gas, like sensors that capture natural gases, which are being emitted from the ground, and then flying maybe near the ground and looking for natural resources of maybe CO2 or something. So that's certainly something which is a huge opportunity. Inspection is maybe the largest opportunity. Inspection, yeah. Everything that's been built in the last 1,000 years needs to be inspected. Right? Every rooftop, every power line, every solar park, every windmill, every industrial facility. So everything needs to be inspected regularly. Yeah, and that's also a huge market. Oil and gas, but also other companies. Okay, very good. And you mentioned construction, right? So a little bit more about construction. Oh yeah, BIM. That's like when you build a property, you want like a documentation from all the steps. So build it, integrate, manufacturing, which you can do with laser scanning, or meanwhile with photogrammetry and drones. Also. Yeah. You know, like every day you just fly the drone at the same day, you make a 3D model, and then you can just follow the process. You can compare today's model to yesterday's model, and just document it. Yeah, and just document it, save it, and one day when you say like, okay, what again was in this wall? When was this thing? And then you can just scroll back and see how it's been built and where maybe faulty up. And today it's more 3D than I think it started with just being an aerial kind of 2D view, right? Which is not so useful, but now it's like becoming all 3D where you can see the walls and the sides and everything, right? Oh yeah, absolutely. You just when you build 3D models. And you just document it. You can also prove that it's been built the way you wanted it to be built, and there's no argumentation afterwards. So construction is a great application for drones. So I would encourage to look at that really carefully. Okay, very good. Now let's talk about go-to-market strategies. I think the strategy you mentioned 2 or 3 times today was go capture a vertical, right? And which is like an oil and gas or a construction or something, or maybe even limited by geography, like just North American construction or something. It can kind of dominate. It's big enough. Yeah. About $2 trillion, I think. But you know, maybe a little bit more than that. So like in terms of distribution channels in this industry, and I'm specifically asking because Dedrone has been so successful. You're in hundreds of installations right now. Maybe you can share some of the wisdom with the audience about go-to-market, getting distribution. How have you cracked that? How do you figure that out? I always firmly believe that a distribution channel would not sell your products. They will take the orders and give it to you. So unless you have an end customer relationship as well you're building and an end customer focus, there won't be a channel selling your products. I mean, there's just, it never happened in IT so far. So rather than looking for distribution channels, I would rather go for end customers and then take the channels along, saying, hey, this is how I did it. Next time you can do it yourself. But especially in Silicon Valley, it is very easy to get distracted from sales because you have large financing rounds, the next round is coming up, and the next better investor, and more money. So I know many companies who really do only spend that investor money, but don't focus on the customer at all. So, and that's wrong. So the moment a company starts focusing on customers and execution, it will succeed. And my firmly belief is that any company has only 2 types of employees. It's either sales or sales support. Very good. And once a company accepts that and knows it's about deals and about execution, it's only about customers, then it will succeed. Yeah. So everything that you're doing at the company or that you recommend doing at a company has to drive revenue somehow. Some way it's got to end up with dollars in revenue. Yeah, I mean, of course, if your engineering knows it's building product not for the beauty in it, just because there's a business plan behind it and it needs to be sold afterwards, it needs to be in the market. Yeah. And when you have a marketing team that knows it's about lead generation and not about how beautiful your website is and how nice looking your product maybe is, then you're on a good track. Yeah, then it's just a question of execution. Yeah, very good. Okay, we've got a lot more questions here. So DJI has its walled garden. This is I can't even see the name. I think maybe Eli Portugali, I think is the person asking this. But DJI has its walled garden iPhone approach. Any chance for an open source flight controller to become some Android in this space?
PICSOC controller maybe?
Absolutely. Certainly, it's something which is any components for drones or do-it-yourself drones. I think it's a great business concept. Open source. There's some open source. I mean, there's also microcopter from Europe and things. So yeah, it's hard to beat DJI when you build a drone. But I think if you do it right and you maybe add sensors, which then really are totally designed and built for your business case, you can. I mean, you have a high chance.
Yeah. Good. Another question, Eli Portugali. From your experience, how do companies safeguard their drones and maintain them so they do not have technical malfunctions in air? For example, single rotor failure will typically drop a drone from the sky.
Yeah. Well, in commercial, consider it solved. So there's really meanwhile procedures in place that you can easily accept an engine failure, a rotor failure. If it's physically able to fly, it will fly. So consider it solved in the newest and younger generations of drones.
Mostly DJI?
Yeah, DJI does it pretty well already. But also take the Intel one, Falcon, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
So it flies with 2 engines out.
Wow.
And there's, I mean, if it can, whatever do to keep in the air, it will. And consider it solved that there won't be so much more, technology failures in the drone itself.
So it's got software on board that can kind of recalculate the remaining rotors to make sure that it stays in the air, basically.
Yeah, that's an IMU in it. So it kind of wants to be always stable. And if one engine failures, then the other ones just get more power. Yeah. And that's regulated, I think, 800 times per second. Meanwhile, which is super fast, so you wouldn't even notice it.
What if there's failure in the electronics, like one of the boards just wipes out?
Yeah, well, there will be crashes, of course. It can also be a battery can explode. There can be substantial, hardware damage in the boards. That can happen. I mean, there won't be 100% guarantee they always stay in the air, but I firmly believe they become more and more safer and more stable, and less buggy in the hardware software.
So just out of interest, do you see an opportunity at all in the let's say preventive maintenance, predictive maintenance, basically predicting failures, and is there an opportunity there for a startup, or no?
Yeah, there is. There's always an opportunity. I would say it's a small market.
Okay.
I mean, affected would be only companies who really worry about it. Yeah. If you can just accept maybe a drone fails, whatever, just buy a new one. And also, I think the biggest players will do lots and lots more, and also provide tools. Yeah. That you can use to prevent it.
Yeah. Just 1 second. My battery is dying. I think we're not hooked up to the electricity. So, how often are there actual failures? How often do drones fall out of the sky because of a malfunction?
Oh, frequently. But keep in mind, there's 1 million drones sold every month.
And so when you say frequently, you mean dozens of incidents?
I would say maybe 0.1%, maybe
0.1%,
which is getting lower and lower. We fly drones all the day for testing and for POCs and things. We never had really substantial failures. So I would think drone security, safety of drones, is something the hardware manufacturers like the DJIs, Uniques, and so on are really heavily focusing on. And I would think it's getting better and better every generation.
Okay, thank you. Question from Ron Shafran. How and whether do you think the commercial and civilian markets can benefit from the defense and HLS sector as potential booster for drone systems?
Oh, big time. I mean, certainly. The biggest markets for drones is the DoD and DHS. Homeland Security is certainly one of them. So that's one of the biggest markets ever, right? I mean, even the small electrical powered drones, AV Inc. I think sells more drones than anybody else. So it's a big driver for commercial aspects as well. I mean, certainly just in terms of payload and range and autonomy and video transmission and so on.
Sure. Perfect. Sure. Question from Rui Ribeiro. I hope I said that right. Rui Ribeiro. From Portugal. What's your information about prison application? In fact, it's possible to stop all access of object coming from the air in prisons. Is it possible?
Yeah. So prisons is one of our main markets, since it's very, very clear and crystal clear case. So people use drones to fly drugs into prisons. So drugs is maybe not so bad, but if you fly guns into prisons, people die.
Yeah.
So prisons is certainly something, and we see more than 10 incidents a day from drones flying into. And that's just the ones we know. So there may be hundreds of more, and I know it happens. It happens a lot of times. So that's been said, like throwovers and people like throwing things, I think will just go away afterwards. I mean, that's gradually drifting away, since people will use drones to drop things, which is really, really easy. And you can auto-program your drone, you put the waypoint in it, you can take it from Google Maps, you just go, you have a release mechanism. Meanwhile, you can buy DJIs with release mechanism. You can just release objects. It's everything is built in, out of the shelf, commercial. So that's the thing of choice. And of course, then people will continue to drop things into prisons and deliver meanwhile to the windows. So we've had incidents where the drone really would deliver, to the inmate, and there was a long stick on the drone. So it was like a magnetic contact. Inmate reached out, took the stick, took the contraband into. It's a delivery chain Amazon is streaming.
Yeah. So is that your number one market? Is prisons?
Well, it's one of the biggest markets we have. It's not the number one market, but it's certainly one of the ones we're pretty active in getting lots of traction.
Very interesting.
And it's 5,000 prisons in the US, so it's a pretty dangerous country.
Yeah, it's a big market. Yeah. So we have a question from John Brennan. We heard about about where there are great opportunities. Are there any verticals that you think are overhyped, where commercial viability is too far off, too much time before we're going to see revenues in those areas? Any hyped areas?
I mean, some weeks ago I would have said delivery. But when you see like what Zipline did in Rwanda, I mean, they have more like 500 deliveries a day of blood samples. So they're expanding to the second country right now, Tanzania. So maybe Africa is the playground, the test ground for commercial drone deliveries.
Yes, because of low regulation.
Low regulations, very easy to fly, always good weather. And, it's easy to, maybe set up infrastructure for hubs and ports and, drop-off points. So maybe it's coming faster than we think. And maybe it's not here yet because we have to get our things together, and the FAA needs to, open up the market for deliveries and corridors.
So anything else that might be overhyped or was overhyped and is not really overhyped? Anything about hype in this area?
I don't know. It's hard to say if maybe drone racing was extremely hyped. I don't think it's so super cool anymore. But maybe it's getting off. So it's maybe one of the things I would say I'm not super bullish about.
So when we've been looking at drone startups, VCs are traditionally more interested in software solutions because they're more scalable, because every additional piece of software that you sell doesn't have incremental cost, right? Zero variable cost. But yet a lot of startups in the drone space are still hardware based, either sensors or complete systems, drones, or base stations. Where do you think the opportunity for the entrepreneurs watching this, and also for investors, do you think it's in software and hardware, in both? Where do you see the opportunities?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid of hardware.
Okay.
The most valuable company in the world is a hardware company.
Okay.
Just released a new iPhone.
Yeah.
So you can do hardware and combine it with software.
And by the way, that company is a hardware-software combination company for sure, right?
Yeah. So that's a hardware-software company. But don't be afraid of hardware. I mean, building a drone is something which is grateful and good, and it's very nice and beautiful. But there's lots of software concepts also, like Drone Deploy, maybe the most prominent ones of them, where you have like a service platform, and drone pilots can upload pictures, and they create a 3D model of it, a map out of your pictures. So there's lots of opportunities. Many pivoting also into that space. I think 3DR did, so they just totally got away from drones and start building this platform as well, where drone pilots can do things. At the end, if you do software only, it's nicer for investors once it's happening. But for the entrepreneur, I would encourage also to look at hardware anytime. Because at the moment you're starting in software, you have thousands of competitors.
Yeah.
And everybody does the same. And the websites all look the same.
Yeah.
So it's something which is like extremely competitive, and maybe it's easy to start hardware and software.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised to hear say, you know, that potentially building drones, creating drones, the actual drones, might be an opportunity for startups, because from what we're seeing, we're just seeing kind of DJI dominate the consumer and prosumer markets, and even some of the commercial markets, and then, you know, you've got some of the other ones that are so dominant. Is there room to create more drones?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just maybe for a use case. You know what GPR is? A ground penetrating radar. It's a little radar, but it's ground penetrating. So it's really a ground-based radar. Normally, it's based on looks like a lawnmower almost. So take a drone and mount it at a GPR underneath the drone. And it's funny, right? You create an aircraft that looks into the ground. And then you fly maybe in knee height, like 2 foot above the air, and you just map out large areas of underground things, like caves and gold and resources and gas bubbles and whatnot. So you can just create 3D models of underground things. So building a drone like this, which really follows the curvature of the surface, and create a drone specifically for that need, and sell it to companies who explicitly look for resources in grounds, like the bears or something, like maybe big mining companies and things. I think it's a huge market. It could be extremely valuable, but that requires a drone that really keeps distance and knows the altitude and the height and follows curvatures. And it's a special drone. And take it out of the shelf drone, just put a very specific sensor to it, integrate it with the drone's flying behavior, and then you're there. No DJI can do that.
So it's really very specialized drones, right? It's very niche, right? It's not the general purpose ones that DJI does, right?
No, they're mainly for flying and videography. But a very special drone for a very special need, and then go hard in that segment and dominate it and sell it to everybody and his brother. That's a big opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We have some more follow-up questions about the prisons here, but I don't know how much we want to focus more on prisons, but something basically there's a concern here about corruption in the prison, right? Maybe the wrong people controlling the systems. How do you, for example, maybe a question for Dedrone, how do you safeguard against things like that? Bad actors in the prison.
If you have a corruption guy, then there's nothing works.
Yeah.
You just turn off the system and he opens the doors and he opens the windows.
Right.
I think corruption is something we're not ready for. And that has to be solved on a different level, maybe from internal audits and then.
Okay, so a little bit back to deliveries, because that's really when you open the newspaper, that's really the most kind of mainstream application. You mentioned Amazon, but there are a lot of other companies. I don't know if you heard of Flytrex. Israeli startup started a delivery service in Iceland. You mentioned Zipline in Rwanda and so Tanzania. Do you think, outside of your specific sector, do you see deliveries as becoming really the #1 area of activity for drones, say in the next 12, 24 months?
I think deliveries will happen.
Yeah.
There's no question. Everybody wants it. It's cheap. It's easy. It's very obvious to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about remote areas. MetaNet was one of the first companies who introduced deliveries into third world cities or third world countries. So that will happen. The question is of how and who and what, and rules and regulations, out of sight and things. But I know many companies who are working on deliveries.
Yeah.
So maybe the business case is not so much in, we are the ones who own deliveries, right? Okay. Well, maybe just build a grabber. That grabs things.
Right.
And sell it to companies who build drones for deliveries and make that right. Make a perfect grabber for parcels or anything that has to be grabbed. Maybe that's the idea. So build a component. But delivery is one of the biggest markets, I think, that will happen in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, very good. So let's talk a little bit about you, Jörg, for a second, if you don't mind. So we're very interested in your background and what you've done. A lot of the people tuning in to this webinar are not from the United States, from Israel, from Portugal, and a lot of them are entrepreneurs, right? And I think there's a mantra that you basically have to move to the US, maybe even to Silicon Valley, in order to succeed as a technology startup. Now you've done this. I think from, if my memory serves me right, you started Dedrone in Germany actually, and then you made a decision to relocate here. And we're just very interested in your journey and your decision making, and why you moved here, and whether you think that was the right move, and what would be your advice to other non-US based entrepreneurs?
If you're working in IT or security or drones or anything, I would say tech, you just can't ignore the United States. It's half of the world market, period. So if you're dealing in Europe with just another country, different regulations, different language, need to translate everything, different sales approaches, maybe everything is different. So it's so much easier when you just consider the market size. So that's number one. Number two is, and there's absolutely undoubtedly, there's the biggest companies in the world have been created here in the last 40 years. We in Germany, we have no software company, no software made in the last 40 years who made it to a world level. We own
SAP is older than that.
It's older than that. It's founded in 1972. And since then, there has not been a single success in Europe for any software company. So that's a fact. There's maybe successful companies, for $100 million companies, but there's not been like an Uber, or Facebook, or Google, or So this is absolutely the place to be, and you just can ignore it, or you will be small, right? I mean, if you're there, so I can encourage everybody to look into the US from the beginning. If I would have to do it again, I would immediately start the company here, not over in Europe, and then flip it and do the things. So start it over here and move here as soon as you can. And seriously work out of Starbucks. That's what we did. And just ring bell, get cheese, knock on all the investors' doors and try to get some money and start the business. And then focus on the customer from day one. Don't focus on investors. And then build a business. Build really a sustainable business, which can be extremely well done here, because you get lots of advice, you get brilliant people, you get a mindset which is similar to Israel or Germany, and you get a lot of exposure. I mean, seriously, the funding rounds are bigger, so you get more money than you would get anywhere else in the world, and the access to talent who can also help you. We added lots of people who've done it before. So we added, after our Series A, we added business angels, people who have done successful business before, who have founded businesses, like John Chambers from Cisco, for instance. He's our investor.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Or Andy Bechtolzheim, who was the founder of Sun Microsystems and Arista Networks. He's an investor. People like Hans Robertson, who founded Meraki and made it huge in 6 years. So these people can actually, contribute, and actually they do help. They help with advice. It's free most of the time. So they help with advice, with their time, with their network, and that's why don't even think about it, just do it.
Yeah, and from here you can attack other geographies as well, right? So the US is probably your primary market, but I think you have a lot of installations in Europe, and you can easily sell back into Europe even if you're based here, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the battle will be won here. It will be fought in many countries, but certainly will be won or lost here in the United States.
Yeah, completely. Actually, also our portfolio companies, while all of them migrate here and are eventually based here, they do sell worldwide, and so they end up having, say, 75-80% of their revenues in the US, but they can still sell in other places as well. So a question from Iran on our team. Do you think that we'll see more opportunities for drone companies in countries where there are less regulation? So we hear a lot about the US regulations. We feel like they're quite strict. But there are other countries that maybe are a bit more welcoming, maybe a little less regulation. Do you think that those are good areas for drone startups to operate commercially? And are there such hubs that you know about worldwide that are easier to operate?
It's a logical thing to start where it's easier. It depends, I would say now, like a little bit on the application itself. If you're flying beyond line of sight, then maybe it's easier to start in a country where you don't have this regulation. And Africa is maybe a good playground for that, or the Middle East maybe, with large open spaces and where you can just like go huge distances. It depends a little bit on the application itself, but I would say like anywhere in the world, it's the same need for drones. And I've seen some funny models which totally went away, like cleaning drones with cleaning opportunity, cleaning windows.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's in the first place, it's ridiculous. But in the second phase, it's like, it's really cool because, I mean, cleaning is a huge market, right? Like skyscrapers and especially like in Dubai or so, where you have huge facades and window, to be cleaned. So build a cleaning drone that cleans windows. Maybe it's a big business. I've seen it once, it went away, never know what happened. But there's certainly a lot of business models which can be rethinked.
Okay. Another question from Iran. Do you find it hard finding drone specialists to hire? What is your biggest challenge in terms of hiring?
Oh, hiring is key. Hiring is one of the most important things. Actually, it's one of the 4 tasks of a CEO. So any CEO has 4 tasks. So it's like vision, business strategy, then hiring the management team to execute its strategy, culture and communication. So hiring the management team is absolutely key, and it's something which is you put a lot of work in it and find the right people to do it. Recruiting and hiring is one of the biggest CEO tasks, absolutely, of all. You find specialists anywhere. It's easier maybe in Silicon Valley, but you pay more. So I would rather go to a country. I mean, we did it in Germany, to go engineering in Germany because it's cheaper, and sales and marketing in the US because that's where it's been done right. And run the company that way. But finding HR is, I mean, look for them all over the world. Find the best people you can find. Just don't stop looking for the best talent. Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah, we find that in our companies as well. Very good. So I think we're almost ready to wrap up here. Let's see. Do you have any final thoughts, recommendations for entrepreneurs thinking about going into the drone space? Could be about anything. Could be about hiring. Could be about finding your investors. Could be about your business ideas and concepts. Anything else? Any other wisdom you'd like to share with this crowd?
I think if you really consider Silicon Valley, you have to answer the questions about your funding. Silicon Valley is mainly about funding, next round and previous round, and who funded and what and so on. So my advice would be to make it really easy. Just don't try to oversell in the first place. Make it a crisp solution and try to answer all the questions. Sometimes I see pitches where you're so proud of the technology and people just want to keep on talking about the technology, which is maybe ultimately just a part of it. How about your marketing structure, sales, competition, financing, HR, people? I mean, there's so many aspects of it. So one aspect is, sorry, I know you're different, but don't overestimate investors.
No, absolutely.
I mean, they look at thousands of business models and every day, just keep it simple, make it a 10, 12 pages, but just really come to the point and don't talk about too much about technology, which is maybe one of the entrepreneur's favorite things, but it's totally distracting.
So talk more about the market opportunity.
What's the market?
How are you going to make money?
What's the market? How does the market is growing? What's your unique, thing? What's the problem you try to solve? What's the team behind it? What's the financial predictions? How much money you really want to raise? And if you have a 1-hour pitch 30, 40 minutes and take 10 minutes to talk about the investment. You need 10 million because of what? And then you lay out why you need it, from whom you need it, and what's important. Rule number 2, yeah, it's great to have the best prominent names in your cap table, but they won't do your job. They won't do your business. So any money is green, but certainly you make a decision based on your customers. Like our purchase manager is a security specialist. He doesn't even know Sequoia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He thinks it's a park.
Right.
So it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant who you have in the cap table there. Yeah. It's good for you, but it's nothing more than for your ego. Yeah. So consider any VC, also the smaller ones, who maybe are doing more for you and coaching more and providing network and helping in strategy.
Very good. Very good. Well, I think unless there are any other questions, I think this is pretty much it. I think we've covered a huge amount of ground here in 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun, and it's really great to watch Dedrone and be in contact with you, and we hope to do more things with you in the future. Jörg Lamprecht, I want to thank you very much for doing this.
Thanks, Jörg. Thanks for letting me do this. Thank you.